Listen to that sound. That is the sound of creation. But not the gentle creation of a brush on canvas. This is the violent, beautiful, necessary creation of pressure meeting resistance. That is the sound of an alchemist at work. And you are standing in the middle of your life surrounded by raw ore, piles of it. You call it by other names: problems, setbacks, bad luck, my past, my limitations. You see it as waste, as something to be cleared away, mourned over, or dragged behind you like a ball and chain on the path to your destiny. You have been taught that success is a clean room, a straight line, a sunlit path free of debris. That is a fantasy for the fragile. That is the brochure for a life never lived. The truth, the brutal, magnificent, liberating truth that every immortal builder from Leonardo da Vinci to Thomas Edison to Oprah Winfrey has known in their bones is that your obstacles are not blocking your path. They are the path. They are not the lock on the door to your fortune. They are the very metal from which the key must be forged. You have been praying for the gold while cursing the weight of the rock that contains it. You have been seeking a life without friction, when friction is the only force that can generate the heat necessary for transformation. This is not about positive thinking. This is about applied philosophy. This is about the most potent form of alchemy ever conceived: mental alchemy, the deliberate, disciplined process of taking the base lead of your circumstances, the disappointment, the failure, the rejection, the pain, and subjecting it to the profound internal fires of perspective, purpose, and relentless action until it transmutes into the solid gold of wisdom, strength, and unshakable character. The world will give you lead. It is your birthright, your curriculum, your raw material. You can choose to be crushed by its weight, or you can choose to build your forge, light your fire, raise your hammer, and become the alchemist of your own destiny. The choice is not about what happens to you. The choice is about what happens within you when it does. Will you be a reactor, dissolving in the acid of resentment, or will you be the crucible, holding the heat until the transformation is complete? Look at the common life. An obstacle arises: a lost job, a failed venture, a betrayal, a period of lack. The untrained mind, the mind of the victim, does one of two things. It flees. It seeks the immediate anesthetic of distraction, blame, or escape. Or it fights the obstacle itself. It rages against the immovable object, expending all its energy in a futile war of attrition, becoming bitter, brittle, and exhausted. Both responses are forms of spiritual surrender. They grant the obstacle total power. They confirm its identity as a poison. The mental alchemist takes a third path, one that seems like madness to the uninitiated. They do not flee, they do not fight the obstacle head-on. They study it, they walk around it, they touch its surface, they assess its weight, its composition, its density. They ask with the cold curiosity of a scientist and the visionary eye of an artist, what is this really made of? And more importantly, what can it be remade into? The obstacle is data. It is feedback from reality. It is a precisely calibrated signal pointing directly to a weakness in your armor, a flaw in your strategy, or a misalignment in your purpose. The loss of a job is not just a loss of income, it is an engraved invitation to build your own enterprise, to reassess your true market value, to discover a skill you never knew you needed. The betrayal is not just a wound, it is a masterclass in discernment, a liberating release from the wrong alliance, and a furnace that forges a deeper, more resilient trust in your own judgment. The period of scarcity is not just an empty pocket, it is a forced education in resourcefulness, creativity, and the true non-monetary foundations of wealth. The obstacle always carries within it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit, but that seed will only germinate in the soil of a mind prepared to look for it. The first law of mental alchemy is this: Nothing enters your experience without a hidden curriculum. Your task is to find the syllabus. This requires a fundamental shift in your point of perception. You must move from the narrative lens to the alchemical lens. The narrative lens sees life as a story happening to you, where you are the protagonist and obstacles are the villains placed there by a cruel author or a random universe. This lens creates drama, identity, and a comforting, if disempowering, sense of fate. The alchemical lens sees life as a workshop. You are not the story, you are the smith. The obstacles are not villains, they are raw materials delivered to your bench. The universe is not a cruel author, it is a relentless, impersonal, and perfect supplier of the exact grades of metal you need to craft the specific tool you are destined to become. When Edison's laboratory burned to the ground, destroying years of work and prototypes, he did not look through the narrative lens of tragedy. He looked through the alchemical lens of opportunity. He famously said, "There is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." He saw in the ashes not the end of his work, but the purification of his process. The fire had cleared the ground. The obstacle of catastrophic loss was, to his mind, transmuted into the gold of a fresh start. He was not ignoring the pain, he was processing it through a different, more powerful internal furnace. Your furnace is your philosophy, your internal operating system. You must build it now, before the next fire. You must forge for yourself a creed so strong that when the heat comes, you do not melt. You temper. The heart of this furnace is a triad of eternal flames. The first flame is radical responsibility. The alchemist takes 100% ownership of the meaning derived from the event. This is not about blaming yourself for what happened. It is about empowering yourself with the response. The moment you say, "This happened to me and now I must deal with it," you are a victim. The moment you shift to, "This is happening and I am responsible for what I make of it," you become the alchemist. You seize the authority of interpretation. Viktor Frankl, in the unimaginable crucible of Auschwitz, discovered this supreme law. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. He could not control the camp, but he could control what meaning he extracted from the suffering. That extracted meaning, the will to live for a future, to find humor, to help others, was his alchemical gold. It was what enabled him to survive and later teach the world. Your furnace must burn with this fuel. I alone assign the meaning. This obstacle means what I decide it means. The second flame is purposeful inquiry. You must interrogate the obstacle with specific, empowering questions. Do not ask, "Why me?" That is the victim's lament, a question that leads only to the circular dungeon of self-pity. The alchemist asks, "What is this here to teach me that I desperately need to learn? How does this reveal a hidden weakness that once strengthened will make me invincible? What door is this closing so clearly that I am finally forced to walk through the right one? What person is this revealing I must no longer be? What new skill, relationship, or insight is this pain demanding I develop?" These questions are your tongs. They allow you to handle the white-hot metal of the event without being burned by it. They turn your gaze from the external cause to the internal curriculum. Every "why me" holds a prisoner. Every "what can this become" holds a pioneer. The third and most vital flame is directed action. Alchemy is not a meditation, it is a process. The heat of new perspective is useless unless it is used to change the shape of something. The gold is not in the thinking, it is in the doing that the thinking inspires. The obstacle has shown you a new weakness. Forge strength through immediate, disciplined training. It has revealed a flawed strategy. Hammer out a new one with relentless iteration. It has burned away an old identity. Use the fire's afterglow to sculpt a new, more authentic one. This is where the mental becomes physical. This is where the metaphor becomes manifest. Abraham Lincoln's alchemy was not in losing elections, it was in the relentless study, debate, and political repositioning each loss forced upon him, hammering his character and rhetoric into the precise instrument needed to hold a fractured nation together. His obstacles were the anvil, his persistent action was the hammer. Your pain must be processed into motion, grief into creation, anger into focused energy. Inactivity is where lead solidifies into a permanent burden. Action is the hammer blow that begins the transmutation. But you cannot swing that hammer in a vacuum. You require a mastermind crucible. The lone alchemist in a tower is another myth. True transmutation often requires the combined heat of allied minds. When you are deep in the smoke of your own forge, you can lose sight of the metal's true nature. You need other disciplined minds to see what you cannot, to hold the vision of the finished sword when all you see is a misshapen lump. They are the ones who will point out the impurities you've missed, who will pump the bellows when your arms grow tired, who will affirm that yes, beneath this scorched exterior there is gold. Andrew Carnegie's Mastermind Alliance was not a social club, it was a collective furnace where business obstacles were melted down and recast as industry-dominating strategies. Share your process with those who understand the craft. Seek counsel from those who have worked with fiercer fires. Your alliance multiplies the alchemical heat. As you tend these flames, a miracle occurs. You begin to develop alchemical sight. You start to see the world not as a series of random happenings, but as a continuous delivery of raw materials. The rude customer is no longer an annoyance, they are a polishing grit for your patience and communication. The delayed project is no longer a frustration, it is an extra hour in the furnace to strengthen the core idea. The financial pressure is no longer a terror, it is the compressive force needed to crystallize your resourcefulness into diamond. You stop fearing obstacles, you start curating them. You begin to understand that a life without obstacles is a life without raw materials, a barren workshop where nothing of value can ever be made. You develop a taste for noble difficulty, for the kind of challenge that promises a proportionate upgrade to your character and capability. This is the mindset of the athlete who craves the weight that breaks their muscles so they can rebuild them stronger. It is the mindset of the entrepreneur who knows that each near-fatal crisis is forging the backbone of a more resilient company. So now, stand in your workshop. Look at the piles of lead that litter your floor, the disappointment, the rejection letter, the debt, the grief, the dream that seems deferred. Do you see waste, or do you see potential energy? The choice is the only one that ever mattered. The universe has delivered to you free of charge the exact ingredients required to build a version of yourself so formidable, so wise, and so valuable that you would not have believed it possible from the softer, easier ores of an untroubled life. Your hammer is your will. Your anvil is your character. Your fire is your unwavering faith in the process of transformation. The forge is your mind, and the gold is the unshakable, earned, radiant person you become when you realize that the obstacles were never in your way. They were the way. Now pick up the heaviest piece, stoke the fire, and begin to strike.